Kiwis coming up to the line. I think Britain are going to be out of it, aren't they, for a medal? Oh, they're coming through just for the...
All right, okay. Return to the Mac, get on what it is.
And actually, when the boys came in from the Olympic final after winning the gold medal, they pulled into the pontoon. And I sort of nonchalantly walked down and said, "Hiya lads, how was that?" And everyone went, "Oh, it was average." So the Olympic final was due for the 30th of August, 2021, right?
Yep.
Yep. At 10, I think it was 10:30 in the morning. And at 10:30 in the morning, on the 30th of August, 2020, a year before, I got the boys into the boardroom. And I had the clock on the wall, and it was quite dramatic. But I said, "Boys, it's now 10:30. I said, "There's going to be an Olympic final in 1 year's time, and there's going to be 6 crews in it. And our goal is to make that Olympic final, to qualify. And our goal is to get into the final, and our goal is to win it. And we are never going to mention that again from here on in."
Tony, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to having a bit of a chat about everything that you've done as a rower and as a coach. So thank you very much for coming in today.
Very welcome. Don't know if we're going to get through everything.
We probably will not.
Yeah.
There is so much detail to go into and cover the sport.
Yeah.
But do you want to just start with what you were telling the clay shooting team?
I had only 24 hours ago, I was asked in to discuss mental skills with the clay target team in the school where I work, Christ College. And they wanted an immediate fix as to how not to get nervous and miss the targets. And I said, well, it's not as easy as that. You've kind of got to go way back and learn some skills and have some goals, but also, have some visualization skills and relaxation skills. And that takes time to practice and to build these things up. So I said, I can't give you a fix, but we can start the journey. And so we chatted a bit. And one of the boys then said, so what was, because we brought in the idea of how Olympic athletes deal with stress and pressure. And one of them said, "Sir, what was your sort of philosophy? What was the thing that you went back to all the time?" Which was a great question. And the answer was just being average. And I went around the room and I said, "Hey mate, like Jimmy, you're pretty average at your sport, and Johnny, I teach you maths, you're average." And you could see all the faces drop. And I said, "How do you feel?" And, "Oh yeah, average. That's not very good, is it?" And I said, "Well, that's the New Zealand connotation. It's not very good, but I'm a maths teacher. And an average is actually halfway between your best and your worst." So I put a little diagram up on the board, and your best was right at the top of the board. And then I put their worst just below that and said, "Right, where's your average now?" And they said, "Oh, that's really good. It's right at the top. It's nearly as good as you can be." And I said, "Exactly it." So every day you try to be average, but your worst is better than anyone else's best. And actually, when the boys came in from the Olympic final after winning the gold medal, they pulled into the pontoon. And I sort of nonchalantly walked down and said, "Hiya lads, how was that?" And everyone went, "Oh, it was average." So yeah, being average is actually what we look for. Not being your best, because you can, like, theoretically, you only do that once, do you?
Yeah.
You can only be your best once ever in your life looking back.
Yeah.
But you can certainly be average every day.
Well, one of the things that I'm really excited to talk you through today is to go back to the beginning and start with kind of where you grew up. But also how you got into rowing, and then cycle through to when you were competing at rowing and going through and finding where your average was, where your best was, and just how you worked. Potentially sort of learning a bit about you. Potentially you went beyond your peak performance, and I'm keen to understand sort of what you learned there as well. But just going back to the beginning, where did you grow up? And how did you get into? So
I grew up all over the place. Dad was an engineer and worked all over the world. So Irish, obviously, but was born in England and lived some time in Wales, and then we were in Canada for about 5-6 years.
What sort of engineer was he?
He was involved in construction. It was more of a quantity surveyor type thing. It was called a cost engineer, and he basically made sure the companies didn't spend too much money on what they were building. And so, because it was construction, probably 2 or 3 years at one job, and then we'd move on. So we moved all over Canada and North America, and then we ended up back in Limerick in Ireland when I was just a teenager. And I went to a school called the Crescent College, run by the Jesuits, good guys. They didn't have a rowing program, and I was a pretty lazy, overweight you know, I was a nice boy.
Yeah.
So my mum says,
Well-
but
Well, we were just
didn't do
talking
any
about
exercise.
we were just talking about year 10s and
Oh, yeah.
camps
That
and all
was
of
the-
that sort of thing before.
That was the
It
classic.
Sounds
The classic year 10, yeah.
yeah.
And I had a friend in class who just kept pestering me to come down to the river
Yeah.
and give this thing a go. And do you know what it was? It was peer pressure, because a whole bunch of guys went down one day and I was left. And I thought, I'm not going to be left behind, you know, teenage motivation.
So
I went down, yeah, and you know, within a month, most of them had quit, and I loved it. And that was when I was 15. And that's a
Fantastic.
few years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at some point you told your mum that you wanted to be an Olympic athlete. Where did that come from? Oh, cool. Oh, great.
Where I went.
Apologies. I'm getting too relaxed. Thanks, Andy.
Amateur.
Yeah, total amateur. But your mum at some point said, or you told your
Oh,
mum
yeah.
that you were interested in
Did I tell you that?
competing in the Olympics.
Where did you hear that one? Did I tell you that? No, I tell you, I was in the club, and it was probably only a year after I joined, so I was probably 16, and I can't remember what it was, but it's probably coming up to exams at the end of the year, and I was meant to be home studying,
Yeah.
and obviously told Mum that I was at home studying and she was out. She got home, I wasn't there, so she knew where I was. So down to the rowing club she comes, and I remember she literally grabbed me by the ear and pulled me out of the club, and I turned to her and I said, "Mom," I said, "I'm going to go to the Olympics someday." And I think that was the first time I ever had sort of thought of that. I don't know, was it just to get her off my back? But
Yeah.
yeah, and she brought that up years later when I went to the Olympics, and I'd forgotten that, and she reminded me of that she had said that I had said that to her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where do you think that drive came from?
Lionel Richie, actually.
Of all places?
Yeah, no, I'll tell you that. I watched the closing ceremony. I always watch the Olympics. I think every kid does.
Yeah.
And in awe, you know, just enthralled by what was going on, that people could do these things. And I watched the 1984 Olympics. That's a long time ago. And watched it, you know, thoroughly. It was the middle of the night, obviously, for us in Ireland. But I watched the closing ceremony. And that was just fantastic. But Lionel Richie got up and he sang all night long, right? And I thought, I want to go and do that. And it was nothing about boats or winning medals. I want to go and see Lionel Richie and go to a big party like that. And actually the marathon was on that night as well. It was the last event, as it always is. And an Irish lad, John Tracy, got the silver medal. And he had never run a marathon. He was this scrawny white little fella. And I was blown away by an Irish fella could do that.
And
So yeah, the seed was planted. I
yeah,
think then, yeah.
there's a particularly cool documentary about Richie McCaw's kind of final World Cup, and he sits down and explains his path to becoming an All Black, and talks through a conversation that his uncle talked to him about, which was, hey, your goal is to become an All Black, and then how do we reverse engineer
Yeah.
that path
Yeah.
for you? Did you have something like that, or did you think,
Yeah.
hey, the 1990s, if I was to compete in the Olympics, the 96?
No, I
One would
didn't
be-
actually. Like that initial spark was there,
Yeah.
and then I pretty much promptly forgot about it. But organically started to think about, well, what's next? And
Yeah.
my big goal was, for a long time, was to be a national champion. And it took me 10 years of trying to be a national champion. And I'd come second so many times. So that was the goal. And eventually I did that at the age of about 24, and a little bit later than a lot of my contemporaries. And the same year then, I decided I'd go out to national trials, because one of my friends, again, peer pressure, one of my friends was doing it. And I said, well, I'm as good as him. So I went out to national trials and made the team.
Yeah.
And that was my first World Championships back in '93. And obviously, if you go to the World Championships, the next stage is the Olympics, because it's the same people you're competing against anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. I was just so focused on being the best in the country
Yeah.
that it didn't really occur to me that you could at least try to be the best in the world. But it sort of snowballed really quickly. And so '93 was my first Worlds. And then, yeah, three years later was my first Olympics.
Yeah. And then within that, within the team and within the environment, you got introduced to Thor Nilsen, who then became a massive influence over your entire rowing career.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about what his philosophy was? Because it's pretty, when we got
Yeah.
into it initially, it's quite interesting.
So Thor was Norwegian and a legend at the time that he took over little lowly Ireland. I still don't know. I think there was a couple of bottles of whiskey one night somewhere when he came across for a conference, and he actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I'm only half joking here.
Yeah.
He doesn't remember most of it. And someone said to him, why don't you come and, because he'd been with the Italians and the Spanish and a lot of big teams. And he wasn't at a loose end, but he was between jobs at that stage. And he said, yeah, why not? I'll try to take this little project of no hopers. And he came across, and we were just blown away by this guy. But very soon figured out that the skills he had were not so much actually on the water skills, teaching you how to row properly.
Yeah.
We had other coaches who were just as good or better. Organizationally, he was very good. Physiologically, he was very good. He knew about training programs.
Great.
But philosophically, that's where I learned so much from him. And I would say 10% of what I learned from Thor was rowing related. The rest was life. And that life stuff sort of snowballed back into rowing again. He was a really good sharer of knowledge.
Yeah.
So he came to us, and there was no keeping secrets. You know, you see football teams and stuff. They don't have training in public because they don't want the secrets to be let out.
Yeah.
He did the opposite. He would share all his coaching knowledge with anyone who asked, and he would even give stuff to. He coached teams from Norway and England and Sweden at the same time,
Wow.
competing against each other. He set up a training center in Italy when he was head of Italian rowing. Like, he insisted that if he got the Italian job, he'd have to set up an international school of rowing where he invited people from all over the world to come and train with the Italians and learn their secrets. And because he did it, and we used to do that. We trained with, over the years, in lots of different countries with South Africans and Spanish and Greeks, and everybody learned from each other, and the whole talent pool went up. Everybody got better around the world.
Yeah.
The best people still won,
Yes.
but it just improved everybody. And like, he was called the rowing teacher. He was just,
Yeah.
Thor was the god, literally, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thinking about it from a technical coaching perspective, mindset and organization, and then the physiological aspects, because rowing's one of the, in terms of sort of tension on your body and how fit you have to be, it uses every muscle. Well, friends tell me it uses every muscle in your body.
Yeah.
And so how did he and I mean you as an organization structure that program?
Well, he structured it. We just said, okay, we'll do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And because we were young and stupid, he used to use us as guinea pigs. So he'd take us away for 3 weeks on a training camp to Norway, say, in the middle of winter, where the lake was frozen. So we'd have to actually go and row in the sea. It wasn't frozen.
Great.
And he would train us sort of 4 or 5 times a day, doing ridiculous stuff, like in blizzards, cycling down to the lake and then doing 40 Ks and then coming back and then repeating that 3 or 4 times. And eventually we broke, and we said, why did you do that? Oh, I just wanted to test you. You're my guinea pigs. You know, the Italians wouldn't do it. They'd look at me. The Spanish are too intelligent for this, but so I choose you Irish. So he actually used us a lot to come up with what the human body could endure.
Wow.
And we're very proud of that. That those.
And where was your breaking point now?
Oh yeah, I mean, it depended on it. I think individually, if we tried it, we would have killed ourselves. But because we had a team around us, he didn't want to let the boys down.
Yeah.
So he says himself sometimes he went too far with it. But it was in. I mean, he knew what he was doing before. He wasn't just testing us.
Yeah.
Guinea pig. But he was refining his training programs. He said that's what he did with us, and we did it because we believed every word he said.
And were you working on things like technique and stroke rate and a combination of those skills in order to then figure out what got you to victory?
I think the technical, like when we talk technical stuff in rowing, it's the actual interaction of the athlete and the boat and the oar. It's literally how you move, and there's ways to do that.
Yeah.
What he was very good at was actually the physiological side, getting you up into a physical. Because as you said, it's a pretty tough sport. I mean, it's up there with. I mean, I think cross-country skiing is number one. I think they're just absolute lunatics. Well, rowing's pretty close up there.
The biathlon.
The biathlon, exactly. Do that, shoot a gun, when your heart rate's 200. That's where the lunatics hang out. But rowing is probably the toughest thing for sane people, I reckon. And but he was sort of a real mover and shaker in training methodology.
Yes.
And he taught himself that. He taught himself physiology and biology.
Yeah.
And physics and chemistry and how the body reacted and lactate levels and heart rate stuffs and different types of programs. It had all been, I mean, Arthur Lydiard was a big proponent of that back here in New Zealand with running. And the East Germans, of course, despite what people say about, taking drugs, they were so far ahead of everybody in terms of training. Yeah. The amount and the type and the periodization of training. And Thor just brought that to another level. Cool. So we gained from that. And that was huge. And actually, I think of all the things he brought to us, there was 2 things. There was one, we didn't know our limits, you know. None of us knew.
Does anybody know their limits though, do you think?
No,
No.
I still haven't
Yeah.
come across that. You still
Yeah.
get extraordinary. And I'm thinking right now of a kid I just taught not an hour ago
Yes.
in year 9 maths, who, sir, I can't do it. I just can't get it, sir. So I sat down with him, gave the other boys some work, and at the end of it, he was just, oh, sir, this is easy. And I didn't think I could do it,
Right.
you know. So
Yeah.
I think we plateau to a certain extent, or we get incrementally until age takes over. But even still,
Yeah.
I mean, I was in the gym the other day doing some weights with some 17-year-olds and stupidly trying to lift more than them, and I was sore the next day. But yeah, but he taught us that, and he also taught us the value of that it's only a sport, and it can be life changing, but it's only a sport. It's a game, and we do it
Yeah.
because we love it, and to show respect to ourselves and our teammates, but particularly our opposition as well.
Well, I'm very interested to go into your career. And one of the things you mentioned just before was you came second a lot before you
Yeah.
had the breakthrough at nationals and then
Correct.
went to worlds.
Yeah.
How did you it's very frustrating coming second.
Yeah.
How did you overcome that frustration, and how did you have the resilience and grit to keep going?
Yeah, I think resilience and grit you can describe that as being either stubborn or stupid. Sometimes I should have probably quit.
Yeah.
But I'm stubborn, so I just kept going. And I don't know why. Yeah, I was down and I tried to learn from things, and I went again and I lost again, and then I came back the next year and went again. I think it's because, you know, fundamentally you enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, the end result is, while it's disappointing, or it can be disappointing, you don't do it for that. If you do it for the end result, I have found you don't get the end result. If you do it because you love it, with the end result as something to get you up in the morning, but the day-to-day challenge of doing things right,
Yeah.
that's what I loved. I almost got to the stage, the better I got at rowing, the more I kind of didn't want to race, because it just got in the way of training and getting better. It was a strange sort of mentality. Oh yeah, I'll go out and race then.
Yeah.
And only at that stage did I start to win things, when I focused on the day-to-day stuff, you know. So yeah, it was the daily challenge that kept me going.
And you competed in Atlanta in 96 and then
Yeah.
Sydney in 2000, and then you did some amazing world performances in 2001.
Yeah.
How did you approach that first Olympics versus second Olympics versus the
Yeah,
worlds?
Yeah, I think I approached all the competitions the same way, in that it was the same program, it was the same people you raced, it was the same country. So I might have raced them the year before in the pair, for example, and then we go to the Olympics and it's the same boys in the four we're racing, and we know them, and we,
Yeah.
you know, have a cup of tea with them or a beer afterwards or whatever. So in terms of getting hyped up for the Olympics, I never did that. I actually just, because the rowing is set, like all the events, it's separate from the main games.
Yeah.
So when you go into your own competition, you're in a bubble anyway. So it's just like any world championships. Everybody else gets excited about it. I deliberately don't. It's just another regatta. Then you see the Olympic rings and you go, oh, it's actually probably a bit more special. And you only do it every 4 years. So, approaching those big events, again, I learned as I got older, and I'm still learning. And every one I came back from, there was always a what if, or I could have, or I should have, or I didn't do that. And I would try, at least I thought I tried, to change those practices and get a little bit better. And then I'd go to the next one and realize, oh, I left something else out. Or I look back, I didn't quite do that well enough. So it was all this process of trying to get better and trying to learn and not quite reaching it. And like before we won the World Champs in 2001, I'd come second twice and third twice and fourth twice
Yeah.
as well in that. So I always come late to the game. I'm not one of these people who just does it straight off and can get it first time. So that's where the stupidity and the stubbornness comes in.
Or the persistence and greatness.
Persistence and grit.
and-
Yeah.
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 Because that leads to greatness, because it's practice and reflection. Did you have some particular strategies where you kind of wrote things down afterwards in terms of, hey, I need to improve that, or
Yeah.
or you had like a team debrief afterwards?
Yeah. You can have team debriefs, right? And you can have team debriefs. And it depends how honest you are and how honest you want to be. And that is often dictated by the people around you. Even if you don't realize you're doing it, sometimes the truth doesn't come out. because it's easier just to talk about, oh, well, we could have trained harder, or we could have gone to bed earlier, we could have not had that 2 pints on that Saturday night. And whereas like the real McCoy, that's hard, and not every team can do that. And looking back, there was certainly lots of teams I was involved in, and looking at myself in the mirror, you know, even at that high level, because we were some of the best rowers in the world at the time, didn't quite go that last step sometimes to actually. And I remember, you know, one of the things I saw which really amazed me was Sydney, where we raced, and we finished racing, and that was a disappointment. That was the biggest disappointment of my life, because we went with a pretty good crew and just didn't quite get the training right. Didn't see it at the time. But the day after the final, we'd gone for a party the night before, as you do. And that morning, at about 8 o'clock that morning, I got up to go to breakfast in the Olympic Village, and I looked in, there was a couple of gyms there, and I looked into the window, and there was one of the Danish boys who had won a bronze medal the day before, back training again. And I went in and I said, "Hey, Thomas, well done yesterday," because I hadn't. I said, "What are you doing?" "Oh, yeah, well, I'm back training for 4 years' time." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, and the other 3 lads are over there," and they were all on bikes over there training. And I went, because we were used to taking 2 weeks off doing nothing and having McDonald's. And so little things like that. And there is, well, actually, it's not so much the 2 weeks.
It's the mindset.
It's the mindset. Yeah. And the mindset, as I got older, the mindset got better and better. And I learned to ask more questions. I learned then to trust myself when I knew stuff and didn't question things. The training twice on Christmas Day, all those little things add up. The nutrition, huge. You know, even now to this day, I will talk to sports teams, and I will say everybody talks about success beginning in athletic sense with your training program, and then you've got nutrition and equipment and coaching around it. To me, nutrition is the number one. If you don't get that right, you can forget about everything else. If that is your sort of your gold standard is your nutrition. What you put in determines what you can do. So yeah, I learned a lot of that sort of 29, 30, 31 years of age.
And so what's a standard meal for a high performance rower?
Lots.
Yeah.
It's just lots of it. And balance. Like it's not rocket science. Most high performance rowers, very few of them will take any. You won't see them taking protein bars or powders or, you know, the stuff that the gym junkies. No, it's just plenty of good fish and pasta and vegetables and meat and lots of it spread out through the day.
Yep.
Before training, during training, and after training. And obviously you have to kind of tailor it slightly to what you're doing. So, you know, after a gym session, I used to just have a pint of milk and a tin of tuna. That was perfect. That's what you need. And then in the middle of a rowing session, I bring out 2 bananas and some honey sandwiches. I even did some bike racing years later, and over in France when I lived there. And they'd all turn up with their gels, and I'd have fruitcake and roast potatoes and like that. Because it works. It was cheap as well. But so yeah, it's a process of learning, and I think I was quite good at realizing I wasn't good enough and saying, right, let's just be open. I got better at that. Yeah. At the start, I was a bit blind to it all, but I got better.
I think it's one of the. I mean, we're going to chat about good to great and the path to the Olympic gold at Tokyo, but I think that's one of the key things is radical candor across a team.
Oh yeah.
In order to be able to say, hey, this is how we improve day after day.
You have.
And then just to round out your move to New Zealand, and now your current role, how was the last Māori Cup this year?
Oh, it was good. Yeah. We had 60 boys went down to it. Big program this year down in Twizel. And it was one of the most enjoyable years I've had in terms of like the talent at the start. As a rowing coach, as any experienced coach, you can look at the raw material and say, right, this could be, in terms of results, we could win gold medals, or we're going to struggle to make finals here. So our lads, I thought with what we had, I thought we should make finals, but it's going to be difficult to get medals. And it turned out like that. 42 of the 60 boys we brought down made an A final, which was the most we've ever done.
Fantastic.
It was great. And top 5 in the country, actually, 42 boys. A lot of those came fourth. But that's all right. We had a number of national champions as well. But I think looking at them all, did they achieve the best? Absolutely. They did as well as they could do.
And do you bring that same Tor Nilsen approach into sort of coaching across New Zealand?
Yep.
Do you talk to other coaches and that sort of thing
All the
across
time.
the other training programs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go out of my way to talk to other coaches and to help other teams. So like this year, I have like been on a bike with a megaphone, coaching Kashmir, coaching St Andrews, Christchurch Boys High. Anybody who asks, I'll just help them. And also up at sort of other, and I speak at coaching conferences every now and again as well, and I'll take all questions and answer them as honestly as I can. For that reason, I think if we can improve everybody, then we all improve and everyone gets better. I'm not into petty, and it is Thor. It's Thor speaking right now in an Irish accent. I'm not into, petty rivalries like Christ College Boys High bullshit. I really, we're dealing with sport and we do it for fun and we should make the most out of it and not guard ourselves against. It's nonsense. Even at an Olympic level, you want people to do well. And I have lots of stories of how we've helped each other at that level in terms of training or at competitions or lending each other equipment. And then you go out in an Olympic final and you race these people. Yeah. So yeah, I'm there for everybody if they want me.
But one of the things that came through very clearly was just having the right people in the right roles and then being able to start an Olympic campaign.
Yeah.
But you got brought into the campaign pretty early on when I think Hamish Bond and Mahi Drysdale were starting to get the 8 going. Was that?
Yeah,
right?
that was. They started that in probably around December 2018, I think, or September 2018. And they got into that and I got into it then. They asked me to come up in April of 2019. So that was actually only, the plan was to qualify the boat for the Olympics in 2020. So we only had 3 months. So I got on board 3 months before the qualification regatta.
Is that normal? Or do you usually get more time?
Oh, you get more time. Yeah, you get 4 years or more. And they had an AIDS program there since about 2012. And it was very much up. It was more down than up. And not quite making it the bottom of the A final or the top of the B final, or sometimes even came last, and it just wasn't working. And a lot of people put a lot of time into it, and it just wasn't working. And then Hamish and they were going to scrub it. And Hamish and Mahi decided, for one last fling, they'd come in and see because they both wanted to win the 8. And it sort of built a little bit of momentum then. And then they were looking for a coach for that. So for some reason, they asked me to come up. Still don't know why. I mean, I had coached 2 of the boys in school, but I don't know if their word had a lot to do with it. But
you also had Olympic experience, and you knew what it was to compete at an Olympic level. So
I had coached 2004 for Ireland. I rowed at the Olympics obviously twice, and then I coached for Ireland in 2004, and then walked away from it. Just go back to teaching school kids because I really love that, and spend time with the family. And I had no interest in going back. Well, there was a little germ at the back of my head sort of knocking on the brain saying, go back. And I waited till 2017 and I went off to Lithuania with the junior team, the under-19 team. And we had a 9-week campaign. That was it. Took a term out of school. And that went well. And cheekily then they asked me, hey, would you come and do the 23s next year? And that was probably about another 3-month gig. But I couldn't take time out of school at that stage because I had my sabbatical. And I cheekily just said, well, look, if you're looking for me, I'll take an elite crew. But otherwise, I just can't do it. And left it at that. And they were a bit shocked. And then a year later, they rang me and said, do you want to come up and do an elite crew and do the 8? So yeah, I popped up to Carapiro.
And how did you go about selecting the 8? Because there was obviously a squad that there were a few people in the squad and that sort of thing. How do you go through a selection process?
Yeah, it was pretty short term at that year, the 2019 year. We had about 12. I think the most we ever had in the squad was 14. But there was a core of about 12 guys there. And selection, obviously, that would have started long before I got in there. So there was a pecking order, and there was data, and there was tests, and there was seat races and all sorts of stuff, and historical data as well. So we had kind of a reasonably good idea who the people were. And that was done. New Zealand have a panel of selectors. It's a system that I'm not too happy with because, and I made it very clear that I think the coach should have a huge part in selection because you know these people,
Yeah.
Intimately, you know these people. But I didn't. So I kind of handed it over to them a little bit. And they gave me these 8 people. And I said, that's fine. They're good athletes. A lot of them had medals at 23s and juniors and worlds, etc. And that was the 8 then. And we went off to Europe and did some regattas and then went to the World Championships to try to qualify for the Olympics.
And you said that they had some great races they had some terrible races.
Yeah.
And so that's almost the law of averages that you're talking about at the beginning.
Yeah, that was a poor average.
Yeah.
That was actually the average.
Yeah.
Some of them were shocking. We say we weren't together long enough, and I didn't know them, and they didn't know me. And the first day I went out with them actually on the water in Carapiro, I had to stop them after about 500 meters because there was about 17. There was only 8 guys in the boat. There was about 17 different technical ideas, and they were all doing different things. So I said, look, we have to pare it back and start from scratch. And they were all on board, but we didn't have enough time. 3 months was not enough time. And we did a regatta in Henley, which we won. We beat the Olympic champions. That was one of the good ones. Then we went to the Netherlands and came 3rd, and that was reasonably good. And then we went to Poland and don't know where we came, but that was really poor.
Yeah.
And it was like that all along. And
did the same group of men start in that campaign?
Yes.
You had the same.
Yeah, that was the same. So the team was selected as I arrived.
Yeah.
National selection. So that was your 8 in your cock. So there's your 9 people. So that's what I had to work with. Now I did move the boys around in the boat a lot, because sometimes it does make quite a difference depending where they're sitting, who's the stroke man, who sits behind them, who's in the up in the bow, being a bit more technical.
And when you're experimenting with different people in different seats, what are you looking for?
Magic.
Yeah.
You're looking for magic.
Yeah.
There are a few coaches who can automatically go, you row there, and I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
I have to go through all the iterations, and then we come to a consensus about which one felt the best or went the quickest. And that's cool because it's all training.
Yeah.
And the boys bought into that. And we did come up with a pretty fast crew. And unfortunately, Stephen, one of our stroke men, got very sick at the Worlds, at the start of the Worlds. Actually collapsed in the bathroom, and it was touch and go whether he'd actually race. But he got better and better. But they got to the final, and they had to come in the top 5 to qualify, and they came 6th by half a second. So, yeah, that didn't end well. And that was 2019. So, we thought the game was up at that stage. We'd been told if we hadn't qualified, we were toast.
How do you coach a group through that? And obviously, how do you build, sort of talk to the people back in New Zealand and try and get some consensus around still? Yeah,
still going with it.
Yeah.
Some of the boys told me that night they were retired, and they were in tears, and I wasn't ready for that because I'd only been there 3 months. So I went back, and being the maths teacher that I am, I looked at all the data from the regatta and realised that we were only half a second off qualifying, but we were only 2 seconds off a bronze medal. We're actually very close to being really good.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the teams that had qualified were no chance of getting medals. They had qualified like 9th or 10th, and our event had only 5, unfortunately, because it's the 8, lots of people. But so with that, and we had the backing of a very, very generous sponsor as well, and he insisted that we keep going. And we made the case that, look, I think we're very close to being really good. We didn't qualify, but I tell you what, we don't have a lot to make up.
Yeah.
So they said, yeah, let's go for it. One last year.
How do you tell the story of that trajectory? Because obviously being in the role for 3 months and having that squad together for about 3 months, you can only see so much.
Yeah.
But you can tell the story of trajectory, and that's probably what you're talking about in the data.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'd say it was up and down, and the average wasn't great, but there were peaks in that, and so there was potential in that. Some of the boys did actually retire. They just weren't. They retired after we heard that the Olympics was postponed. So everybody was back on board, plus a few new young guys. And then, of course, with COVID, we were told it was postponed. And at that stage, it's very hard to train anyway, but to train for something that may not even occur and take time away from your family and career. A number of the boys stepped back from that at that stage, and we replaced them, not replaced them, but there was a couple of younger guys, sort of 19, 20-year-olds came into the team.
Yeah. And they'd been competing over in the States and
that
sort of thing.
Yeah.
At a college level?
Yeah, at a college level or on under 23 New Zealand level, which is high, but it's not, not top level, but talented. And in fact, there was 2 of them I coached in that Junior 4 back in 2017. So I knew them really well, and they came into the program. So it kind of got to the stage that I actually knew a lot of these guys really well now.
Yeah.
And I'd spent a time with the rest of them as well. So the bond, if you want to call it that, the personal bond, which I hold really, really to be a really important aspect. The actually knowing of the person, not just as an athlete, but as a person, that really was very strong. Yeah.
And why do you think it's so important to know the person?
Oh, you need to know what makes them tick. One of the things people always ask me, what's the difference between schoolboy rowing and Olympic rowing?
I have it as a question.
Well, we'll answer that one now. They think there's a
Yeah.
difference. There's not.
Yeah.
Okay, they're taller and they lift better weights and they go faster in a rowing boat. Well, that's minuscule. What's the important thing is they're a human being and they've got aspirations and they've got disappointments and they've got laughs and loves and that all makes up the person. And if you can get that kind of stuff right, or at least address it, or know what makes you work as a person or what makes you doesn't work, then you can actually get the best out of them as an athlete. So to me, and I just like to know people. I don't treat people as commodities. They're actually people first. Oh, and then the rowers afterwards. And that's the way we operate it. That we actually became quite close as. I mean, I was the coach. Obviously, I have to make hard decisions, but I would never let that get in the way of my personal feelings towards people. I like these guys.
Yeah.
They were good, and we'd have a beer together and we'd chat and have a laugh. And they'd take the piss out of me, and
Yeah.
but when it came to making a call,
We're
I'd say,
average.
right, we're going to do this, boys, today. Yep, that's
Yeah.
cool. We'll do it. So yeah, the person is so important. So when we had, 2020 then rolled around and we had a bunch of people, and that closeness was getting, but there was way more to it than just being close, because you can be close to lots of people but still be crap at your sport.
And then you mentioned the crazy year that was 2020, and the Tokyo Olympics was supposed to take place that year, and then obviously were postponed, but you still had to qualify and you still had to go through that entire process.
Yeah.
How do you set about a program with all of that chaos? How do you set up a program to potentially win an Olympic gold? And was that the goal, or was the goal to sort of
Good
wait and
question.
see whether the team was up for it before you set
Good
that goal?
question. I think very early on we all knew, especially with the young guys coming in, that there was potential, and my head left to go back in the single. Hamish was still involved, and he was like the top athlete in the country. But the boys were getting very close to him, so I figured if we got 8 Hamishes, we probably in with a good shot. But so the Olympic final was due for the 30th of August, 2021, right?
Yep.
Yep. At 10, I think it was 10:30 in the morning. And at 10:30 in the morning, on the 30th of August, 2020, a year before, I got the boys into the boardroom, and I had the clock on the wall. And it was quite dramatic. But I said, boys, it's now 10:30. I said, there's going to be an Olympic final in 1 year's time, and there's going to be 6 crews in it. And our goal is to make that Olympic final, to qualify. And our goal is to get into the final, and our goal is to win it. And we are never going to mention that again from here on in.
Wow.
We never mentioned the word win. It was never, ever going to be about winning. Okay, it might get you up in the morning, like I said earlier, when it's dark and it's cold in Carapiro, but that was not the goal. Because boys accepted it straight up. And not one of them, I think, ever mentioned, they said they never mentioned that word. I never certainly mentioned it till 2 days before the final, when I thought we might win it, because they were going really well. But that was never the goal. The goal was to be absolutely, every day it was to be average.
Yes.
To be the best. You can't try to be better than you were the day before. And that goal was enough. That was the motivating goal. And for everybody, it's tough. It really is tough doing that. And it's not just the training, it's the fact that you're away from your family, some of them, that you've had to put your career on hold. So mentally it's quite difficult as well. But somebody had to step up every day to be the hero and show everybody we can do this.
Yeah.
And you latched onto his coattails. So if he was in the gym and he decided to do 10 minutes extra on the ergo, everyone did. We came in off the water one day, and Hamish got down and started doing press-ups, because it was a long row, about 35k, because the physio had said, look, you just need to strengthen some of the shoulder. You got some issues in your shoulders. So 20 press-ups after every session. So he did it. Next day, we all did it, including me, in all my coaching kit, 20 push-ups. So anytime somebody came up with something good, everybody latched onto it. Tom Murray was brilliant at coming down early. He was there half an hour doing his pre-stretching and stuff. Everyone was down half an hour early. So there was that sort of learning from each other and relying on your teammates when times were tough.
Yeah.
That was very...
12 months of training at that level is extremely tough. Yeah, just on the body, on the mind. And that's where the mindset element that you were talking about before comes in with. Is that where you saw it play out in terms of that the mindset of excellence and striving for excellence? Not necessarily winning, but like just excellence?
Excellence in everything you do.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, nutrition before. They ate properly. There was no question of consistently eating bad, right? They slept properly. So they would go home after the second session, say at 2 o'clock, and everyone would go to bed for an hour because that's ideal, or 40 minutes, whatever it is. The stretching was done excellently. The washing of the boat when we came in was done excellently, or at least as good as we could do it. That's all you're looking for. Just do it as good as you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's hugely motivating if you do something well, even if it is just washing a boat or tightening a rigger, getting there on time. And it carries you through the tough times, looking around you and just being surrounded by excellent people. That's just brilliant. And I loved hanging out with that. And I'm used to that now. And sometimes I'm a bit tough on some of my apathetic year 12 algebra classes who are not really into it. And I said, lads, you just try to be your best. And that's even if the point is that you don't, the winning at the end, I know we're jumping ahead, but the win, and I've won things before myself. The winning at the end is actually a huge anticlimax. It's satisfying. Yeah. But it's certainly not, tears running down your face and jumping on the podium and all that stuff. It's just a firm handshake and a smile. And when you look back, it's not that. Medals go in the drawer. Any medal I ever have is in a shoebox, in behind the pots and pans in the bottom drawer of my kitchen. That's where they live, and they always stay there. And every now and again, my kids will pull them out and put them around their necks. But because it doesn't mean a damn thing.
But the journey.
The journey.
Yeah. It's all about the journey.
All about the journey. Yeah.
And what about competition? Because you do, like, you're a maths teacher. You're very data driven as a coach and as a rower yourself. How do you look at competition when you're competing at that level to say we have a shot?
Oh, so you mean comparing yourself to the opposition type thing? Is it?
Or just understanding the opposition?
I don't.
And what they're capable of.
Yeah, I mean, you're aware, right? Because you race them and you see stuff. You see times and you see results of regattas and you know they're there. But I have never, ever, ever fixated on the opposition and what they're doing. Yeah. And I know that's different in... Okay, I won't say that. You're aware of new departures from the path, or new technology or new training methods that other people might, or new maybe equipment, for example, right? So different type of oars come in every 5 or 6 years. Yeah. Subtle differences. So you go, oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Might leave it a little while, see how that goes, and if it starts to look like it's working, then you give it a go. Yeah. But I don't jump on bandwagons. Yeah. There was a very famous one of the Dutch age who were one of the favorites for the Olympics in Tokyo. They were the silver medalists at the Worlds, and actually beat us in the heat. They were top class guys, and they Red Bull, of course, made a little carriage that sat on the end of the boat with 2 little outboard motors on it, right? And you turn them on, and the boat just took off. Obviously, it went 10 k's faster than it normally would. And the whole idea, and it kind of made sense, was to try to move quickly. Teach the athletes to move faster than they would normally move, and more skillful and more. At that speed, you've got to be very accurate. Yeah. It's trying to play darts. Throwing 10 darts in 2 seconds, you got to be so accurate but so loose, and it made sense.
And it puts you under pressure as well.
It does. It puts you under trying to keep up. And I could see where they were coming from with that. Yeah.
I was initially thinking they were using this in a race or something. No. Just like blatantly cheating.
Mercury 40 horsepower at the back. Yeah. But then with that, no, actually, you don't even need to do that. What you can do is you can shorten your oars to make resistance a lot less, which means you can move faster. Or on an ergo, the rowing machine, you can just drop the resistance down to 0, and that means it's exactly the same thing. So you didn't have to go to that. So, but the thought was good, and I could see what they were trying to do, but I figured that's a bit too much. Let's just get on with what we normally do, and
slow and steady,
and that's rowing, and it's always been like that. Yeah. People. There's always sort of divergences, shall we say, and the latest fad ways of rowing and different oars, etc., and even training programs, but. eventually it comes back to sort of this normal, what we've always been doing in rowing. You just do it better or more of it. And that's what the East Germans did really well. They just did more of it, slightly better than anyone had done so.
You mentioned them earlier in the interview. What do you I know absolutely nothing about the East Germans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So of course they were under the communist system, and the wall went up in 1956, the Berlin Wall, and completely isolated from the Western world, and obviously a satellite state of the old USSR, and their way of promoting themselves as a country, they weren't economically strong. They had no natural resources. They were almost an agrarian backward sort of a nation. But what they decided to do was be the best sports nation in the world. So they built these centres all over East Germany. They picked up kids at the age of 8, talent ID'd them, which people do now. And they were so far ahead. And they'd move them into these schools where they would do their schoolwork, but they would also train under professional coaches. They gave them drugs, which was part of it. And a lot of them now will admit that. But they also used a lot of science and laboratory testing and the stuff that is, that the Western world only just started discovering in the 1990s. They were being doing in the 60s. So they used this small little country of, 12 million people. They were gold medalists in winter, in summer, in running, in swimming, in rowing, in everything. And they regularly topped the medal table. And that was their way of saying, the communist system is the best system in the world. And that's precisely what they did.
How much do you think sporting excellence relies on kind of your genetics and like your makeup?
Well,
like tall gymnasts versus short rowers and that sort of thing.
There's an old saying, you can't put in what God's left out, right? So if you want to be a basketball player, it helps to be 6'6".
Yeah.
5'10" won't cut it. So, and it depends on the sport.
Yeah.
So obviously gymnasts need to be small, flexible, strong. Marathon runners need to have very large lung capacity. You can't do it if you're a smoker. Yep. Some other sports, though, tend to lend themselves a bit better to just working harder, and rowing does. You can become a very good rower. Pretty much anybody can, if you're willing to put yourself under that, and very few can. They don't spend the time, because it's an old woman's sport. You get good in your 30s. There's no early success for a lot of rowers unless you're hugely talented.
Well, let's take that as like a good way to go back to the Olympic campaign. Because we were chatting about the Good to Great Flywheel in advance of this conversation. And once you've got the right people in the right roles, and then you're starting to have some pretty radically honest conversations as a group.
Yep.
Where can you go from there?
Well, they're the two main things, isn't it? The right people. Okay, you can go out and try to recruit them, but it's very hard if you don't know them. Sometimes they just come along, the right people at the right place. And you can have a system that brings a lot of good people into that over the years. And New Zealand Rowing does it quite well, and certainly certain companies do it, and schools as well. And of course, you have to have a bit of decent leadership and all the pieces of the jigsaw. But the second one you said there, the honest conversations, that's the huge one. Are you willing to look at yourself? And certainly at the start of that campaign, we did. We sat down and I said, look, boys, we're lucky to be back here. I'm going to start off by apologizing. I didn't do as well as I could have. Looked back, and there's many things I could have done better. And all I can do now is just promise that I'll do my best and learn from those things. And every one of them then stood up and said exactly the same thing. And that was the start. And it was that brutal honesty. And that's not just a one-off. You can't just write it on your flip chart and then just, stick it back in the drawer. That you have to live that every single day. And once you start to do that, then, like I said, the goal then becomes sort of secondary. It's actually living up to that pretty high ideal of trying to do your best and being really honest when you're not. And like we had Daniel, who was 19, right? He was over from Yale, first time in the senior team. I remember him standing in front of Mahi, double Olympic champion, and finger out, pointing him in the chest, like pressing him and saying, "You turned up late to training today. That's not good enough." Angry. And Mahi stood back and said, "Sorry, Dan, you're right." A guy half his age.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I thought, "Oh shit, we're going well here." The boys are really buying into this, and the older guys are buying into this. That you
And
can.
what were some of the points around the table that you discuss?
Oh, I think the basic ones. Look, I certainly there was one or two of them said, look, I don't eat well enough, and that's a huge thing. I don't eat well enough. I'm going to go to the nutritionist now and really get this sorted. One of them said, I'm a bit stupid when it comes to it. I might miss a training session, right? Which everyone does for various reasons. Things come up, but I'll go and then try to put that one in the next day. So instead of training 3 times a day, I'll train 4 times a day, and I'll get injured, and then I'm out for 2 weeks. And that happened a lot. Now, Hamish was dreadful at that. He like, that's made him great. He would do the amount of training and then do twice as much, but then he'd get injured. And he injured himself as he got older, and he had to learn that as well. And he learned that, spreading the load out, and if you miss a session, it's fine. You're better off to have a rest, eat some good food, and be ready for tomorrow rather than try to squeeze in another one, because he was that guilt. So everybody had their own little thing. And one of them just said, I'm just a dickhead. He said, I should be a lot less of a dickhead to you guys. And I go, yeah, you're right. So it was that's actually personally looking at himself. Another one, he said, look, I tend to let my relationship stuff get in the way of you guys. And that's separate. It is part of me, but I need to compartmentalize a little bit better. And we understood that.
Yeah, so a real wide variety of things.
Yeah, I mean,
Each
everyone,
is different human beings in that boat.
That's exactly human beings. And
Yeah.
they all bring their athletic, kudos to the boat. Each of them are very good at various things. But they bring their personalities as well, and the things that make them tick. And they actually bring themselves, like this fundamental core of who they are as a person, to the organization. And once you see that, then, whether that has an effect or not, it has effect in terms of, you're dealing with honest people. And then what comes from honesty is trust. And talking about selection, like you did earlier, there's 2 things I select on, and I still do, and I say that to all the teams I coach. I select on, I select on consistency and performance. So you can't be, good one day and crap. You have to be good all the time or average all the time. And the second thing is trust, and trust comes from that.
Yeah.
So trust and consistency are my things. And if you do that, you're in with a shout of getting in. And every single boy, girl, woman, man that I've ever coached and selected into a boat certainly shows those 2 things.
So going back to the beginning of the conversation where we were talking about claybird shooting, and just how to operate under pressure, can you give us a slight, you'll only be able to give us a touch of an insight into what that actually means, to jump into a boat and race in that Olympic final. But how do you go about preparing a claybird shooting team or a men's rowing age?
I think there's the first thing is the mindset in that, and I said it to the boys, the claybird guys yesterday, that even if you win, no one's going to know. No one cares.
I love it.
Like, even if you win an
Nihilism.
Olympic gold medal, you can walk down the road, unless you're like an NBA player or something, right?
Yeah.
You're going to walk down the road and no one's going to know. And it brings you back down to earth very quickly. You think the world's going to... No, they're not. Couldn't care less. And we've had that experience before at World Champs and Olympics, where I'll just point out some dude on the bank with his dog in some shop, and I said, he doesn't know you're going out for a final. He doesn't care. His dinner's burnt. He's gone home now to his missus, and it just doesn't matter, lads. Let's take it back down a notch. Like I say to the boys, if you win the national claybird title, are they going to put an oil painting up on the wall? No. If you lose, is your girlfriend going to leave you? No. Your parents will still love you. The sun will come up tomorrow. We'll get on with it. So just taking it down a notch in terms of, it's not the be all and end. An Olympic gold medal doesn't, it's not. It's fun and it's nice and it's special, but it's not one of life's most important things. And the second one, you can learn how to control. You can teach the mind to teach the body to relax a little bit more. And that's just various techniques. So deep breathing, relaxing your muscles. There's techniques around that. Visualization is a huge one. Picturing yourself, not winning, but actually performing the activity really well. Whether it be rowing or whether it be writing an essay or sitting in an exam, picturing yourself almost like you're looking at yourself from above. So that when, and Michael Phelps, the swimmer, used to say this, when he used to get to the blocks, he'd already swum that race thousands of times. He knew. He just went autopilot. And that was just a natural thing. He'd done it so many times. It was difficult to actually determine the difference between the reality and the visualization. It was so vivid, each of them. So he just did it. And he had also gone through when things go wrong. And that's a big one. If you can go through, what happens if your swimming suit rips? What do you do there? What happens if you slip off the thing and have a false start? And he went through that over and over again, so that when it did happen on the odd occasion, you were ready for it. What happens if you fail the exam? What happens if you want to sign a business contract with somebody, but they pull out at the last minute? Be prepared for the unexpected stuff. Expect the unexpected. So when you actually get to do it, it goes, oh yeah, I've been here before, in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do the guys do that in advance of that race?
Yep.
Together?
Yep. You would. Yeah. You can do it together. And I learned this from Thor. You can lie down in a quiet room, generally on the ground or on your bed. Close your eyes, go through all your muscles, relax it, and then start to talk to yourself. I am a nice person. I am good at this sport. I like what I do. I look forward to racing. Now you might not, but if you say it yourself enough times, that the mind will believe it. And then you picture yourself doing that action, whether it's snooker or darts or, splitting the gin, drinking a pint of Guinness. It doesn't matter. You're going to do it well. You visualize it. You'll never do it. It's not spontaneous, a lot of these things. It needs practice, and not just physical practice, but mental practice. And it's a very, very powerful tool. The mind is so susceptible. I mean, we're pretty stupid when it comes to it. We can convince ourselves very, very easily. That's what it is.
It has hidden depths.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. In terms of advice, just to round out this fantastic conversation, any advice for any future Olympians going into any sport around New Zealand?
People who want to go to the Olympics or who are almost at that. I mean, because it depends. I think, it depends what level you're at. And it's a very worthwhile objective. I think you got to be realistic that there's only 100 Olympians out of New Zealand every 4 years. It's a really hard thing, and there's probably another 5,000 people are trying for that. And that whether you do make it or you don't make it, it's fundamentally not going to change your life. So embrace it. Like if you get to go away with the New Zealand rep team or a Canterbury rep team and get out of school for a couple of days, just make the most of it and learn from people. Nobody knows. You come across people who think they know it all, coaches, and it's generally not the top ones. It's kind of the mid-range level of athlete and coach who think they know it all. They have nothing to learn. Every day you go out, try to learn something new. And that just adds to your armory. And you become a more intelligent athlete. And the intelligent ones tend to do a lot better because they're able to analyze and learn and change. The fixed mindset people tend not to do well. So be humble. Be hugely humble. And
be average.
Be average.
Be average.
Yeah. It's not bad advice.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today to talk about everything that you've discussed so far. I've really appreciated it, and thanks for joining us on an episode of Steps Ahead.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.